All right. So good evening. We are studying chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. So for those of you who are going to go home and listen to this on YouTube, you'll have the book with you. We're actually starting with Perek Gimel, chapter 3, verse 31. And oh my gosh, thank God. Okay. Without this, I can't do the class. In the morning, I need an espresso. At night, I need some water. So that's just the way it is. Thank you, Mikey. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niya bidbaro. All right, so I was told we had some tough competition. Somebody told me he wanted to watch the news. I'm presuming he wants to see what's on the, they had those three UFOs, right? And they had a presidential briefing to figure out what the UFOs are. And it's some, inner circle, I think, with some of the security people in the Congress and maybe in the Senate. And they told them they wouldn't release the information. So we don't know what it is yet. So I'm figuring there's two possibilities. So one possibility is that it's little aliens from outer space who are invading the Earth, right, with 3 ships, and we shot them down. The other possibility is that the U.S. Air Force has become so incompetent that they don't know what a weather balloon is, even if it hit them in the face. I'm not sure which of those possibilities is more likely, but something really funny or really bad is taking place. I'm going with the comedy. That's just something I learned from my father. I have a positive attitude. So hopefully we're not getting invaded by aliens. That's the lesson for tonight. So thank you for coming.
We are being invaded by aliens.
But not those kinds. Okay. Okay, so let's start. That was just a little, current events, just so we're all on the same page. But I want to go back in time. I don't want to do current events. I want to do past events, right? So we're going back thousands of years. You have this dictator. Let me just find the page in the book.
What chapter?
At the very, very end of chapter 3. The very end of chapter 3. And I'm sorry. Here we go. Okay. Very good. So, the book of Daniel. Number 1. It is a literary masterpiece. For those of you following the classes, whether live or on YouTube, I'm sure you've noticed, and people have actually told me that as they are studying the verses and reading the story unfold, they can't wait for the next episode. People are telling me it's like a TV show, so sometimes people binge watch particular shows, whatever the shows they're binge watch. So people tell me, when I'm giving the class on Daniel, they want to hear what's happening next, what's the next chapter, what's going to happen in the story, right? So it really is a literary masterpiece. And this is before there was Western literature, before there was even the concept of literature. The Jewish people here, Daniel, wrote this incredible book, Beruach HaKodesh, albeit, but still fantastic, fantastic literature. And what we're going to be studying tonight, I think verges on something that is in the realm of almost a horror movie, because we're going to be studying the last chapter dealing with the end of the life of Nebuchadnezzar. This is the end of his life. So the chapter we read last week was in the 8th year of his kingdom, after he conquered Yerushalayim, after he established Beruchim Habayim. My son is here from Eretz Yisrael. What a pleasure. So after he conquered Yerushalayim, after he established the empire, right? So he built that golden obelisk. You remember the story? The story we're reading tonight is almost 40 years later. At this point, he's already comfortable in his kingdom. He's been an emperor for decades. And what we're going to learn is, how does this emperor end his life? And it's a horrifying story. So I'm going to save that. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But beforehand, I want to tell you that what we're going to be reading is a letter. It's a letter written by Nebuchadnezzar describing some incredible event that took place in his life. And Daniel, who was very close to Nebuchadnezzar, right? I mean, Nebuchadnezzar made him the viceroy, right? So Daniel is like the most powerful person, one of the most powerful people in the world, but he wasn't just one of the most powerful people in the world. He's also the personal confidant of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar relies on Daniel for personal decisions, for personal issues. We're going to see what happens in the story. So Nebuchadnezzar wrote this letter. I don't believe that the letter was ever sent out. But Daniel took the letter and incorporated it into his book, the book of Daniel. And incredibly, part of the letter is so powerful that we actually have a pismon in the pismon book that comes from the letter written by Nebuchadnezzar that we will read tonight, okay? So just wait, we'll see everything, but I just wanted to give you that background. So it's just something very special. So let me begin reading the letter to you. Everybody's ready? Again, I apologize that we don't have the sheets of paper, but fortunately I do, and that's a good thing because I don't know the book by heart. So I'm going to read. Nebuchadnezzar Malka, I, King Nebuchadnezzar, L'chol HaMemaya, to all the ethnic groups in my empire, Umaya, to all of the national identities in my empire. You don't know what's happening. For example, in China, you have the Han, you have the Uyghurs, you have different ethnicities, right? Just because you have a nation oftentimes comprises various ethnicities. Usually the case, the United States, great example. So he says to all the ethnic groups, to all the nationalities, and finally, Ulchol velishanaya, to all the languages, the Dairin, Bechol Arad, that live in the entire world. He, Nebuchadnezzar, considered himself to be not just the king, Melech HaMelachim. He considered himself to be the king of kings. He was the king of the world, right? Again, what does it say? Bechol Ara, in the entire world. I conquered the world. I control the world. I am the king of the world. And now I am addressing all of my subjects. Okay. You say beracha. You just had pizza. Didn't have pizza. Some people had, some people didn't. Okay. But before you eat, you say beracha. Before you eat, you say beracha, right? What do we say? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. What does Melech HaOlam mean? King of the world. It is a political statement. People love viewing Judaism as some sort of theological system. So there is the Judeo-Christian religion. No. Judaism is political and theological. Many of our tefillot are actually political statements because in the Gentile world, the Goyim, the kings of the Goyim, they believed that they were some sort of divinity, right? They were not just all powerful or almighty, but they had a certain divinity to them. And we say in every single beracha before we eat, Baruch atah Hashem. And who is Hashem? Elokeinu. He is our ruler. Melech HaOlam. And you want to know who the king of the world is? It's not the UN Secretary General. It's not this president, that president, this prime minister. We have allegiance to the real king of the world, Melech HaOlam, God. It is a political statement, right? And he says, Shelamechon Yiskeh. May peace be upon my people. That's what Nebuchadnezzar says. So Nebuchadnezzar, he addresses himself as the Almighty King, and he tells everybody, first he gives everybody a beracha, peace be unto you, because I'm the king, I can bring peace, I can bring war, I can cause, again, divinity. They used to see their divinity, and I'll say a little more about that soon. But I just want to ask a question. What is the last beracha of the Amidah that we say 3 times a day? We have the Amidah, right? So we have Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. I explained, political statement. What is the last beracha of the Amidah? Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Shelamechon Yizkeh. Again, who brings peace? The Goy king will say, of course, I bring peace, right? I am the protector of all, in this case, humanity. Or, if you were in Egypt under the Pharaoh, I protect everyone. One of the things I wrote about in an article published, I think about a year ago, Paro viewed himself as the great protector of all of the citizens of Egypt, right? So when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to leave Egypt, and Paro says, Mi v'mi ha'olechim, who wants to leave Egypt? And Moshe Rabbeinu said, B'na'arenu b'zkenenu nelech, we will go, all of us, we will go, the children, the young, the men, the women, everybody's going to go. And Paro says, no, re'u, ki ra'a neged penechem. I'm not going to let this happen. You're going to the desert. It's dangerous. The children stay behind. Protector, he's going to protect the children. The women stay behind. The men, you can go, right? So he views himself, this guy who took the children and butchered them, right? He is the great protector of the Jewish children, right? You see the irony here, right? So always the dictator, doesn't matter how many people he killed, doesn't matter how many people were sent to the gulag, doesn't matter how many people starved to death in North Korea, doesn't matter how many people were killed in the fascist war of Italy, in the civil war of Spain, it doesn't matter. The dictator brings peace to his subjects, right? What do we say in the Amidah? Sim shalom to ba'av al-chad. There's only one true king who can bring peace. And who is that true king? Melech Malchei HaMelechim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he really rules the entire world. So if you rule the entire world, you actually can bring peace. These dictators are charlatans. But you understand the idea? So it's so good to read this. And you see how the Jews, they developed many of their ideas in Babel. Right? So when they came to Eretz Yisrael, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, they had some of these ideas in their mind, and they formulated the Amidah almost as a reaction to how the Goyim were subservient to their king, right? So the very notion even of Amidah, we discussed this I think in the first class, what does Amidah mean? To stand, right? La'amo. And what is the job of the people who were working for Nebuchadnezzar, among them Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah? What do they have to do? Ve'yiyu omedim lifnei hamelech, right? So you see all these ideas. God put us in Galut, but while we were in Galut, we learned. We took the despair that we were in and went no, we learned. We absorbed information, we processed, we changed, and then we developed our tefillot thanks to a lot of the things you see in this book. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. So again, this is a letter. Nebuchadnezzar is writing the letter. My dear people all over the world, wherever you may be. Ataya, Vetimhaya. There are miracles. Ataya is otot. Timhaya, wondrous things. There's two types of miracles. I mean, first I'll explain to you the two types of miracles that he's referring to in this letter. Ataya Vetimhaya. Ot is a miracle which violates the accepted laws of nature, right? So there are certain laws that govern the natural world, what they call the natural world, right? Those laws governing the natural world, for example, say that the earth is always in a state where it is rotating around its axis, and because the earth is rotating around its axis, there is night followed by day, followed by night, followed by day, right? That's a continual motion of the earth that brings about the day to night, right? And then Yoshua ben Nun stands up and he says, Shemesh begiv'on dom. Let the sun stand still. And it does. That's obviously a miracle where the laws of nature are broken, right? There is no natural explanation for how Shemesh begiv'on dom, right? Then there's Timhaya. Timhaya are miracles which happen within the laws of nature. For example, we're going to have a holiday soon, the holiday of Purim. The holiday of Purim, if you look at the Megillat Esther, you don't see the name of God once in the entire Megillah. Every book in the Bible has the name of God, right? The one book where you don't have the name of God even once is Megillat Esther. And what prayer do we say in the Amidah on Megillat Esther? I'm sorry, on Purim. When we read Megillat Esther, we say, when we're reading Megillat Esther, what do we say before we read the Megillah? She'asa asher kedeshanu tzvanu on Megillah, and then what do we say? She'asa nisim la'avotenu. Wait, hold on one second. She'asa nisim la'avotenu. So that means we're praising God for doing miracles in the story of Megillat Esther that we're about to read, correct? Is that what it means? Yes, okay. Only one problem. What miracle? Where's the miracle? Which one? Right, we say, Sha'asani sim la'avotenu b'ayamim ha'zeman hazeh, and then we say, Sha'chayanu, and then we read, Vayi b'mei Ahashverosh, hu Ahashverosh. Where's the miracle? In Mitzrayim, I know the miracles. There's 10 miracles at least, if not more miracles, right? Then Kiryat Yamsuf, more miracles. Where's the miracle in Purim? So that's a second category of miracle. There are miracles that happen within the governing system. There are miracles that happen so you have the chessboard, and the chess pieces are moving. So there's one miracle where suddenly something happens that just doesn't make any sense. It's a violation of the rules. And then there are miracles that happen within the normal chess game. How did that happen? How did that take place? Right? How can it be that the Jewish people, who were supposed to be bar minan, chas v'shalom, oivehem shel Yisrael, right? They were supposed to be eradicated. Not only they weren't eradicated, but rather the person who wanted to eradicate, he himself was hung, his children were hung, all the people, the anti-Semites, they were killed. It's a tremendous miracle. And what allowed that to happen is very, very subtle historical events, different chess pieces, organized over the course of many years, and suddenly, boom, the Jewish people are saved. That's a miracle happening within the laws of nature. We call that a miracle. And I'll prove it to you. I'm going to ask a question now. Did anybody here have a miracle happen today or yesterday? You can raise your hand, don't be embarrassed. We won't embarrass you. Oh, he says he has a miracle.
I woke up this morning breathing.
Okay. I was hoping for something a little more dramatic, perhaps Holly would like, but that would do. Did anybody else have another miracle? Seriously. Okay. Now, when you said the Amidah, what did you say in the Amidah? What did you say? Modim anachnu lach. We're thanking God. Al nisecha. On the miracles that you do with me every single day. Every moment. Evening. Every moment, evening, morning, afternoon, miracles are happening. What miracle is happening to us? Which is it? So we believe that every moment God is there protecting us, and we are clueless as to the things happening around us. I'll just give you one small example, just a teeny example of thousands. So if you look at an actual, and it's such a great YouTube video, you really should do this. They have these YouTube videos where they show you the inner workings of the cell and how DNA is transcribed into mRNA and how eventually that's changed into protein. And it's really nutty. Because when I first saw this video, it was like you have literally a long string, like going at ridiculous speed, and I was sure it was just it wasn't the real speed. They were just doing it like that, so you're gonna finish the video. You want to see a slow motion. I was sure the real thing is slow motion, but no, it's like I don't know how many cells we have, millions, billions of cells. Every single cell has these little machines inside that are copying the genetic code perfectly. Baruch Hashem. Thank God that we're here. And you just said something really smart about 5 minutes ago, Bernie. What was your miracle?
I woke up this morning breathing.
How? It's a miracle. No, really, it's just unbelievable. All the systems within our body that allow us to have the genetic code just producing proteins that don't have 1,000,001 mistakes, one after the other, because it should be. It doesn't make any sense, right? Millions and billions of machines in our body right now, system within system. So we say, Anisecha, Shebechol Yom Imanu. Everything is a miracle. The fact that the Jewish people are here, we're here studying Torah with Majnunim all around them, really crazy people. And here we are, Baruch Hashem. We should say, Hodula Adonai ki tov ki l'olam chasdo. So there's so many miracles, we just don't know them. So Ataya are miracles where the laws of nature are changed. Timhaya are miracles which are more subtle, where somebody more intelligent has to think about what's happening, and he appreciates the hand of God. So we're going to continue in a moment. So, he's saying, I'm reading the pasuk again. Ataya v'timhaya, the miracles of God, the avad imi, that God did with me. Elaha ilaha, the almighty God, which is higher than everything. Shefar kodamai lehahavaya, it is now pleasing or beautiful in my eyes that I should now relate it to you. Meaning the purpose of this letter is, I want to let you, my loyal subjects, know certain miracles that happened to me from the Almighty God. I'm going to now write it in this letter. So what's happening is, he's older, as I said, he's soon going to die. He looks back at his career and he realizes that all of his great military victories, all of his great conquests, his ability to build an empire like nobody built an empire before him, his ability to create a first superpower in human history is a miracle. If it wasn't for God helping him, he would never have been able to achieve this. It's a realization that is a very unusual realization. So that's why he's writing the letter. He wants his subjects to know about God's guiding him so that he, Nebuchadnezzar, can become an emperor. Okay? So that's the purpose of the letter. Now you understand the purpose of the letter. He says so himself. I just want to tell you something about, just so you understand what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, because Nebuchadnezzar, he established, in my estimation, the first empire. By empire, I mean the first superpower in history. What do I mean by superpower? I want you to understand that, because in order to understand the psychology of Nebuchadnezzar, you need to know what a superpower is. So a superpower basically is a country which is so powerful that there is no other country that can challenge that superpower. Let me tell you a little about modern American history at the end of World War II. Before World War II, there was the imperial system in Europe, and there was all these wars that took place around trade, around how to bring goods to different countries. Countries needed goods to survive. You need food, you need energy, you need metal, natural resources, iron ore. And you had all these wars, and finally there was World War II, which was a devastating war, after World War I, which was also a devastating war, and America made a decision that they want to end the imperial system. That was a strategic decision. And in order to end the imperial system, America decided that they are going to promote free trade between countries, and they entered into an agreement with the European countries. And the agreement was as follows. The agreement said, we, the United States, are going to open up our markets, and you're also going to open up your markets. And what we will do to grease the deal is we will use our Navy to ensure that international trade is protected. That was a deal that America made with the world, right? And because of that deal, America not just promoted international trade for the Europeans, but also for America itself. But at the same time, America had the most powerful Navy and was able to use its incredible resource to build the Navy and make the Navy more and more powerful. So this is the global system that we had in place. It was around 70 years, now we're close to 80 years. And I want to say this. When the Soviet Union fell, that's when America became a superpower, because at that point in time, there was no other country in the world that would be able to challenge the United States hegemony, the United States Navy, the United States basically ruling and governing the economies of the world as it has been doing. And just to give you a sense of how powerful the United States is, the US has 10 supercarriers. If they took all the navies of all the nations in the world and they decided to fight a war against the US Navy, do you know who would win? Not only would, no, China is nothing. By the way, and just so you know, China is going to fall within the next decade, and I can explain that separately. No, the US Navy, the war will be over in a few hours. It's a joke. Nobody can stand up to the US Navy. Nobody has the technology. They have what's called carriers. They have 10 carriers in the whole world. The US has 10 super carriers. It's a joke. Nobody can stand up to the US Navy. What's happening now, and this shows you how the US is a superpower, is the US has decided as a strategic matter that they are not interested in using their Navy to promote global trade. That's not something that the US wants to do anymore. This is why now we're going to be witnessing the deglobalization of the economic system. And over the next 10 years, countries like China will definitely fall. I don't know what's going to happen in Russia. There's going to be a lot of dramatic things. So you see the power of a superpower, which is a superpower can literally govern what happens in the entire world. Here we have the USA. So the US made a strategic decision. We're not in favor of globalization anymore. That's going to have incredible ramifications for the world, which are outside the purview of this class, because it's not a class on geopolitical strategy. It's a class on the book of Nebuchadnezzar. But I just wanted to bring to your attention, Nebuchadnezzar had that type of power, right? He was the only superpower. He made all decisions. He controlled the economy. He decided whether people have food to eat or don't have food to eat. To your point about China, China will fall in the next 10 years because they just don't have enough water for their people. They don't have enough energy for their people. They don't have enough food for their people. So they will, it's going to be over. I mean, you know, and it's not necessarily a good news for, well, that depends what you like or don't like. But the point being, getting back to Nebuchadnezzar, and by the way, my father said this many years ago. I remember my father saying this in the 90s. This was around when the Soviet Union fell. My father said, I mean, my father loved America, and he always thought America was a special country. But he once told me that he's concerned about the U.S. becoming a superpower, because he said that the U.S. now is good. He said back in the 90s, the U.S. was good, and we used to send troops all over the world, and if there was famine somewhere, we'd have these shipments of food to save the people, and really, we did great things, right? I remember in Africa, there was a lot of these great things. But my father told me, if the U.S. ever decides to leave that path of promoting goodness, as it was doing, it's going to be a very dangerous world, right? And he said, if the U.S. ever decided to become a godless country, so you could have a totalitarian regime, which is a godless country, and that's going to bring destruction. That's what he said literally, that was in the 90s, so I guess almost 30 years ago, close to 30 years ago, right? It was the early 90s when he said that. So that's kind of what's happening today, right? You see what's happening today as the U.S. became godless. They're not interested in helping the world, promoting free trade. There's geopolitical reasons for that. So Nebuchadnezzar was that powerful. And I want to read to you now the next, yes, here it is. The next verse. Atohi kemarav revin. How plentiful, numerous are the miracles that God did. V'timhohi kemata kifin, and his wonders are incredibly powerful. He realizes he's about to die, so he says, Malchuteh, Malchut Alam, unlike me, which my life is passing, but the kingdom of God is eternal. Vesholtaneh imdar bedar, and the governance of God is from one generation to the next generation to the next one. God eternally governs the world. Now, I told you that this was such a beautiful pasuk, and it was such an incredible praise of God, even though it was coming from a Gentile king, that the Chachamim say that as Nebuchadnezzar was saying these beautiful, inspired words, a malach came, an angel came, and slapped him in the face to stop him, so as not to embarrass David HaMelech. That's what the Chachamim say. Again, now, I said we have a song in the Pizmon book. You know the song, Atohi kema rav revim havu malale. You know that song? Atohi kema rav revim havu malale. Right, that's this. That's based on this pasuk, right? All right. Also, we say this pasuk in the korbanot. In the morning, when they say korbanot, they have this after Titpalel Hana. So these beautiful words. You know, Harambam says, "Kabel ha'emet mimei she'amaro." If somebody says something true and beautiful, we accept it. He destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. Daniel did not like him, I'm sure, but he said these words, and Daniel records the words, and we accept it, right? So that's the beginning of the letter. So I want you to appreciate what it means for Nebuchadnezzar to say that God is eternal. Why is that so important? Right, he says, my life is passing, But God's governance is eternal from generation to generation to generation. Why is that so important? Because if you study history, what you learn about tyrants is as follows. They always thought, real tyrants thought, that they will live forever, and that even when they leave this earthly realm, they will continue their governance over their nations. I'll give you a few examples. In China, the first emperor of China, in the year 220 BCE around, forgive me if I'm off by a year or two, Qin Shi Huang. I'm almost certainly mispronouncing the name of the emperor, so I apologize to any Chinese who are watching this video. But I'll just go with Qin Shi Huang because that's the best I can do. First emperor of China. He believed he was immortal, right? He believed he was going to continue to rule even after he dies. So what did he do? Well, he was going to be alive. So he built a huge tomb that he should be placed in when he's dead. And in that tomb, he put all these treasures, incredible artifacts. He put terracotta soldiers made out of clay, right? And he believed that these terracotta soldiers will protect him after he's dead. I mean, you're already dead. I don't know why he needs to be protected, but my vision of Olam Haba is I'm in Olam Haba. I don't have to worry about getting mugged anymore, right? I'm okay with that. He has these terracotta soldiers. He thinks he's going to be the emperor, and they're going to try to kill him because, just so you know, all these despots, they were terrified of being killed. That was like a big thing. Everybody used to kill everybody. If you study Chinese history, it's barbaric. I mean, just barbarism, though. The way they would kill each other in the worst way, sometimes for no reason. It was unbelievable. Anyway, he was worried he was going to be killed after he's dead. So, go figure. Emperor Hirohito of Japan. Again, I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing Emperor Hirohito's name. So if I just offended the Chinese, you'll be happy to know that I offended the Japanese. They hate each other's guts. That they never got over the wars that they had. So anyway, Emperor Hirohito of Japan, he was emperor during World War II. He was worshipped and revered by the people as a god. When they lost the war, he couldn't believe it. It just didn't understand. I am God. How could we have lost? How could? And that's why by the way, Japan refused to give up the war until they were finally nuked, right? There was Hiroshima, and I believe then there was Nagasaki, right? All right. So they had to destroy these two cities, and only then were they finally saying, maybe this thing with the emperor being God, it's not quite working out. Perhaps it would be a good idea to surrender to the United States. So it was. I'm assuming that at some point they realized that there will be a nuclear bomb where the emperor is or where Tojo was, right? So they began to fear for their lives, and they just gave it up. You remember North Korea when that dictator died? I hate North Korea. I mean, they're like, wow, the people are just literally starving to death. They're all. It's horrible. Wow, there's things you hear there. Kim Jong-il of North Korea, he died when did he die? It was like emperor from 1994 to 2011, more or less, something like that. Also, he was a cultic figure, a godlike figure when he died. Everybody was lining up in the streets, screaming and crying, like literally like God. But one of my favorite things. I grew up in the 70s, 60s, 70s, whatever. You probably remember this, Nathan. You remember the movie Victory at Entebbe? You don't remember it, right? With the Entebbe, with the Uganda, when they took they hijacked an airplane, right? You remember that? So they hijacked it, and they made a very nice movie. In the 70s, it was like very fun. I was a little boy, watching it on TV with my parents, and it's all about Israel, and how the Israelis came into Uganda. So for those of you who don't know the story, they hijacked the plane. They took the plane, and they took it to Uganda, which was Idi Amin Dada, as he referred to himself. So Idi Amin Dada, he was Mamash Sonei Israel, horrible. By the way, one of the pilots of the plane, once I was in a symposium where he was speaking, and he was saying how the planes that they used to rescue the hostages, right? So Israel sent an airplane in the thick of night to Uganda, and they rescued everybody. And the guy was explaining to me all the mistakes they made. It was unbelievable how many mistakes Israelis made. The plane wasn't the right plane. It didn't have the right fuel. It was like just one mistake. And then I kind of meekly raised my hand because it's all these secular Jews. I don't want to offend anybody. Can I ask a question? So again, I didn't want to offend anybody. So having seen all the things that happen, and yet you have this incredible rescue, did anybody think that maybe God did something? Like I tried to act it very mention the word God, eyes twitched a few times, right? And then some people have to leave the room, they felt nauseous, but nevertheless the answer was no, nothing to do with God, just the most incredible rescue in the history of humanity. And that shows the greatness of God. He'll use people who are completely don't believe in him. He'll make them do exactly what he wants them to do. So anyway, Idi Amin Dada, Bibi's brother was killed. He was a one person killed in that raid, was Bibi Netanyahu's brother. I think his name was Yoni Netanyahu. Alav Hashem, Nishmato Eden. He died mamash, rescuing other Jews from a brutal dictator. Anyway, Idi Amin Dada, he viewed himself as the conqueror of the British Empire. It doesn't matter that by the time the 70s came around, there was no British Empire anymore because, that kind of ended, I think, in World War II, then imperialism. But anyway, and he was a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, which, the only thing is Idi Amin Dada was African. Muhammad was not African. Again, I'm not saying this to be, trying to be gentle and, just, I don't know, I guess today a man could be a woman, a woman could be a man, a black could be a white could be a black, I don't know, I'm confused. He claimed to be a descendant of Muhammad, and he had a personal army of witch doctors. And these witch doctors used to perform rituals on him so that he lives free of any sicknesses. He was invincible. He had these witch doctors doing voodoo magic on him. All right, so that's the psychology of the tyrant. So tyrants think they're invincible. Tyrants think they will never die. Tyrants think, even if I die, I'm not really dying. There's two types of death, as how do you say it in Yiddish? Zwei deaths, right? There's the death of regular people. When I die, I'm not really dead. I'm going to be in this beautiful tomb. Also, the pharaohs had a similar view of themselves. So just think of what it means that this Nebuchadnezzar is acknowledging the fact that he is not eternal, even though he was the first emperor, the first superpower. Something powerful happened to him that woke him up to knowledge of God. And that's what we're going to read in the latter bit. I really wanted you to understand so clearly how profound this transformation is happening within the mind of Nebuchadnezzar. That's why you all got the historical background. Before we continue, are there any questions? All right. I'm only asking because I've been talking for about 45 minutes, and I want to take a break. All right. Okay, so let's continue. Here's what happened. This is the story. Ana Nebuchadnezzar. I, Nebuchadnezzar. You notice he doesn't call himself Melech Nebuchadnezzar. Shele havet beveti. I was living a life of bliss in my house. Bera'anan behecheli. And in the palace being the center of government, I was ra'anan. You know what ra'anan means? Like a fresh young tree, a healthy green tree. So in my personal life, everything was great. Doctor took my blood pressure of a 20-year-old, 20/20 vision, everything perfect, great, wife, children, beautiful. And in the center of government, don't forget, he was already an emperor at this point for 45 years, maybe 44 years. And everything was great. He was ruling, and there was no opposition. There was no, and in fact, by the way, after he died, the empire continued for another 23 years. His son Merodach, 2.5 years. His grandson Belteshazzar. So there was no threat to the empire at this point. So complete power, complete bliss, very happy. What happened? Helem Hazet Vidi Ha-Linani. I had this terrifying dream. Veharhorin al-Mishkevi. And the dream was so vivid that even as I woke up and when I was awake, I continued seeing the dream on my bed. Meaning, and by the way, it happens sometimes that you can have a dream and then you're kind of waking up and then the dream kind of continues. But in this case, it was a nightmare. And And what happened is the nightmare continued after he was awake. V'chezveh reshi yevahalunani. And the visions that I saw in my mind, they horrified me. Umini, sim ta'im. And I immediately gave an order. Lehan'ala kodamai lechol hakimei Babel. Bring all the intellectuals of Babylonia. Lift them up and bring them to me. Now, what does he say, lift them up and bring them to me? As you remember, in the earlier chapters, when he brought the intellectuals to the palace, about 40 years before this, they were threatened with death. They were going to be killed. In fact, many of them were killed. Right? So nobody was interested in coming to Nobody was interested in coming to Nebuchadnezzar and being told, I had a dream last night. Can you tell me what the dream was? And by the way, if you don't tell me the dream, I'll chop your head off. So nobody wanted to be in that situation again. So Nebuchadnezzar would go to there. Yes, I'd like to see Dr. Shlonkin. Yes, is Dr. Shlonkin home? Oh, yeah, he's on a vacation now. We just had to go a symposium. They don't want to come. So the order is lehan Allah, literally lift them up, take them against their will. Kodamai, bring them to me. Lechol hakimei Babel, difeshar helma Yehode unani. And this time, I'm a little more calm. People are young, they have like hot-blooded, they're like all over the place. I've been a dictator for more than 4 decades. I've calmed down a little. This time I just want you to tell me the meaning of the dream. I'm not going to ask you to tell me the actual dream. So don't be scared. Please just come to the palace. Bedain. Alim Hortamaya. They brought to the palace the Hartumim. We said those are the magicians who knew the Egyptian magic. Ashefaya. Ashefaya are the astrologers, Kasta'eh, the Chaldean magicians, because each country had its own tradition of magic, its own tradition of how to divine things. The Gazeraya, I believe I may have mentioned this in one of the previous classes, I don't remember exactly. The augury, right? Haruspici, right? Right, so it was a practice of examining the entrails of animals, especially birds, in order to divine the future. This was practiced by many ancient cultures, the Babylonians, the Etruscans, the Romans. This is common in that part of the world at this time in humanity. So a priest, would examine the entrails of a sacrificial animal, and then he would look at the patterns and the shapes, and he would reach whatever conclusion. Yeah, they had like these long nails and whatever. I think you get the general gist without being too graphic, right? And it would fall on a pan, and they would look at the pan. So that was a type of divination, right? So all these people entered the palace. V'chilma amar ana kodamehon. And this time I was more mature. I told them the dream. Ufishre la mehodein li. He's relating the story. Right? Remember, this is part of a letter. He's telling the story of what happened to him. And even though I told them the dream, they refused to inform me of the interpretation. Now, the reason they refused to inform him of the interpretation is because they realized that if they inform him of the interpretation, they will once again get their heads chopped off, right? Because it wasn't the news they were about to give was not a good news. And again, they didn't want to get their heads chopped off, so they didn't tell him the interpretation. And I told you, I mentioned that I think last week, President Xi of China, right? One of the dangers of China, one of the reasons China is a danger in the world is because he's such a maniac that President Xi, that if anybody brings him information that he doesn't want to hear, they get killed, or maybe they don't get killed, they get sent to a labor camp, or maybe they don't get sent to a labor camp, they get sent to a torture chamber. So what's happening with President Xi of China is he doesn't know what's happening, right? And it's a very scary situation because when people don't know what's happening, when they're completely cut off from the world, they can do weird things. Weird things happen in those types of situations, especially as things are deteriorating in China for various reasons outside the scope of this class. So not a good situation, not a good situation. They are a nuclear power. When I last checked, I think they might have some nuclear weapons. Not sure, but that's the sense I get. So Nebuchadnezzar, so you see that here, they're not going to tell him what the dream means. Ve'ada Horan, al kodamai Daniel. And finally, Daniel came. Now, what does it mean Daniel came? Why didn't he call him? Like, what does it mean finally Daniel came? Because you have to understand, what was Daniel's role at this point? When Daniel originally told Nebuchadnezzar his dream and told Nebuchadnezzar the meaning of the dream, you remember what happened to Daniel? He was appointed as the viceroy. You don't call the viceroy into your office because you had a bad dream and now you want the viceroy to interpret the dream. That's not mechubad. So there was set meetings between the emperor Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel in his role as viceroy, because he was the administrator of the entire kingdom, and they would discuss matters of kingdom. So when Daniel finally came to him, then he mentions the dream. Otherwise it would not be proper protocol, right? It would not be the right protocol. So the Adachoran finally at the end, Al Kodamai Daniel, Dishemebel Teshasar, and I remind you all, people reading the letter that I'm writing now, right? That Daniel was renamed by me. I gave him the name Bel Teshasar. I renamed him Keshum Elahi. I gave Daniel the name of my God. Bediruach Elahim Kadishin Be. And this Daniel has the spirits of holy gods within him. You notice he's a polytheistic. He doesn't have the spirits of holy gods within him. He has the knowledge that the one true God gave him. But you see, again, he's a polytheistic person, so they can't escape that, right? And then I told Daniel the dream. Now, at this point, he feels good. Why does he feel good? Because the first time, when he had this horrible dream, Daniel not only interpreted the dream, but he gave him a feeling of confidence. He gave him intelligent advice, how to deal with it. And he felt that Daniel would be able to do the same thing here. He felt that Daniel will not only interpret the dream, but somehow guide him and help him in a way that he would be able to overcome whatever the dream had to say. All right. Belteshazzar, Rav Hartumaya, the Ana Yid'ayet Ruach Elahi Kadishin Bach. And now in the letter, he's recalling how he spoke to Daniel. You, Belteshazzar, you, Daniel, you are not just the viceroy of the kingdom, but you are the chief magician. And I know that you have the spirits of holy God within you. I know that no secrets are hidden from you. I had this dream. I'm going to relate the dream to you. I want you to tell me what the dream means. He is confident that Daniel will solve everything. I'm going to give you my own theory. A spoiler alert. Number one, Daniel does not solve everything. Okay? You go to Daniel, psychologist. You go to the psychologist. You hope that the psychologist tells you, don't worry, it's okay. The rat that you saw in the dream eating the cat, this is what it means, but here's what you have to do. Okay. You go to a psychologist. Hopefully you go by. So he's hoping Daniel is going to give him the solution, not just the interpretation. Daniel doesn't do that. Daniel lets Nebuchadnezzar fall. Why? Why does that happen? And the reason is as follows. Nebuchadnezzar, when he had the first dream, that was before he destroyed the Bet HaMikdash. At that point in time, he still didn't destroy the Bet HaMikdash. He didn't destroy completely the city of Jerusalem. So Daniel naturally thought that as the viceroy of the Babylonian Empire, he would be able to somehow maybe stop it, maybe help. He did help. He helped the Jews who came to Babylonia. He wasn't able to stop what happened in Jerusalem. I think at this point in time, Daniel, he was older. And, I mean, he was 45 years older. So I think at this point in time, Daniel didn't want to help Nebuchadnezzar. He already had his power. He already had his prestige. He was the viceroy of the empire. Nobody could question him. And he just didn't want to do this guy a favor. What the guy did to the Jewish people, to Yerushalayim, was horrible, catastrophe. And he just says, you're going to fall. And he lets him fall, right? And that sets the drama that's going to take place in the letter. I'm going to read just the next pasuk. I see it's time. So I think, and I apologize, I know I said we're going to read one of the most incredible stories. We just read the introduction. We didn't get to the heart of the story. What happened to Nebuchadnezzar? What was so horrifying? How did he save himself from that? And you'll see that at the end, Daniel has some sense of compassion to Nebuchadnezzar. So he tells him something to save him at the end, but at this point he doesn't want to save him. At this point he wants him to fall. So we will read the dream next week. We will read what happened to Nebuchadnezzar that literally transformed his life and made him a believer, so to speak. And this is going to be the last that we hear of Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so if there's any questions or... Yes, any questions, comments, concerns? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I see, as I read the Parsha Va'era a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
and you have the Haftorah,
Yeah.
and it talks about Nebuchadnezzar,
Yeah.
mentions his name twice, how God delivered the kingdom of Egypt into his hands, where he broke the back of
Right.
Egypt.
Yeah.
So he's recognizing now, isn't there a parallel? You have a Jew as a viceroy to Nebuchadnezzar. You have Yosef
Yeah.
as a viceroy to Pharaoh. You have Achashverosh, who's the emperor or whatever, of Persia. And you have Mordecai. You see parallels in history taking place of these.
Yeah, yeah.
despots-
So we do see,
despots
right, we do see these parallels. And the parallels between Yosef and Paro on the one hand and Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar on the other hand has been discussed by me and my father and many, many others. I mean, we're not the first one to discuss it by any means, but it's clear. And let's wait till next week to see what happens. רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל, לפיכך הרבה להם תורה ומצוות,